Okay, would you like me to go first, John and Chris?
Yeah, I think we can both call to order. So I'll call to order this meeting of the joint ER9 Policy Committee at 9:09 a.m. on February 25th, 2022.
And I'll call to order the Region 9 Board of Education Policy Committee meeting at 9:09 a.m. as well. The next item on the agenda is public comment.
No members of the public being present. I think that takes us to our next item.
Committee member comment.
None from me. Chris, anything?
Okay, any committee member comment from Region 9? Okay. Item 4 on the agenda is discussion and possible action, election of a chairperson. Would anyone like to nominate a chairperson for the Region 9 Policy Committee?
I would like to nominate Sarah Lieberger.
Okay.
I will second.
I don't know whether do we need seconds?
You don't need a second, just have to ask if there are any other nominations from the floor.
Okay. Yep. Any other nominations? Okay.
Then you have to either take a vote or deem it by unanimous consent
Yeah.
or
Well,
absent objection.
okay. So since we only have one candidate, Sarah, is there any objection?
No objection.
Okay. Congratulations. I think we can turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, do I need to call this to order again or no? Okay,
No, I think you're on the next item of the agenda, which is status of the committee.
great. All right. All right, the status of the Region 9 committee. Where do we go from here? At this point, do we talk about anything prior or do we just move forward? I'm not sure if we need to reflect on anything.
So I think from our side, so our agenda, the next item is model policy review. I think we could look to amend our agenda now and talk about status as well, which I think could allow us to provide some background and maybe give a little bit of color of sort of the way that we've worked in the past.
It looks like you're looking for a motion to amend the agenda to include status of the committee at this point on the Joint Policy Committee's agenda. So I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Chris. And I'll second that.
There's no discussion. I vote yes.
I vote yes as well.
Thank you.
Very good. The agenda is so amended. All right. So I think I can give a little bit of background by way of some of the presentations that we've pulled together in sort of the work that we had done before. And if you'll bear with me just a moment, I'll share my screen here. We can provide access. So bear with me. Good. Okay. All right, can you see that? And I'll zoom in.
Yes.
Good. So what we had been engaged in, there's basically, we were asked by Tom McMorrin more than 2 years ago to do a wholesale review of the policies. There were sort of mismatched policies across the three manuals, the policy manuals for each one of the boards. And Tom had asked that we dive into that and sort of review together in the hopes of creating a sort of single manual. We started
John,
that
can I take it
process.
one step further back?
Sure.
I think what started this was Tom coming to the three policy committees with a stack of documents that looked like a phone book.
That's what I
That
was
was
gonna say.
basically, here are the many policies that have not been reviewed and updated that are now out of compliance with state law. It would be really helpful if the three boards adopted the same revised policies for
Yeah.
these, as opposed to each taking their own position on them in coming up to compliance.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation morphed into a, why aren't we doing this in a wholesale way?
Yep. And that happened. That was actually a completely offline process. So we were each given, I think I had just joined the board, and I was the sole member of the policy committee for Easton's policy committee. And I had basically been given, I can't remember the exact series, but let's say it was the 3000 series and the 4000 series to review. And Chris had a certain set of policy he was reviewing, and there were people on the Region 9 board that had a set of policies to review as well. And as we went through that process, it became really clear that the offline version of the process was kind of doomed to failure, because there were all kinds of issues with sort of sharing and sort of understanding sort of the notes that we had. And it was a mess. So what we asked central office to do is to provide an online version of that, a digital version of the documents. And that I think started actually as scanned pages that we were reviewing. And then we, as we continued that process, we realized that we could get the online version of the CABE policy manual. So long story short, over the course of about 3 months of trying to review and fix the policy that was there, we came to the point where it was clear that we had these sort of separate Frankenstein monsters that had been developed over time and had split in different directions and had not been updated. Some of the policy hadn't been updated in 20 years. And
We'd
so-
look at policy X and there'd be three different versions of the existing
Right.
policy X that we were being asked to update and amend.
Right. And so we, along with the superintendent, came to the conclusion that the right thing to do would be to actually update, in a sort of wholesale manner. So to take a model policy book and to work through the model policy book together. At the same time, and I'm going to stop in a second. I see Mike has something he wants to say. So at the same time, we recognized that there were more timely updates that were necessary, that there were, like, whether it's Title IX or bullying policy that maybe the state or the federal government was handing down and saying, like, here is new statute that you need to make sure that you're complying with. We realized that work had not been happening in a consistent way, and we wanted to provide that. So we would take momentary pauses and say, hey, these 3 weeks, we've now had this mandate. We have to take a look at Title IX policy, make sure that it's compliant with the current administration's interpretation of it. Okay, pause, do that work. And so you'll see that it wasn't simply a sort of plodding through the policy handbook. It was also taking on the input from Dr. Pearson Ugal, as well as the superintendent, whoever the superintendent was at the time, in terms of addressing more timely issues. Mike, did you have something?
Yeah, so I appreciate your explanation. I'm just a little unclear as to how everything really evolved, because it seems somewhat conflicting with my recollection. But can you confirm whether at the time that Dr. McMorran came to this group and said he wanted us to move forward the stack of policies in a unified way, do you know whether or not the districts at that time had already contracted with Shipment and Goodwin and paid the initiation fee to use their model policies?
So that was not something that was discussed at the time or raised. We didn't even consider, and this was a conversation that did include Tom and did include Dr. Pearson Ugal, there was not even a mention that the shipment model policies existed. Not to my recollection, not while I was involved. Chris, you had a little bit longer time on the committee. Was that ever mentioned to you?
No, in fact, I'm as we're talking, going back to minutes from years ago, just sort of to see if I can refresh my recollection as to dates, because I have a feeling that Mike has a pretty clear idea of when this shipment payment was made, and that would help sort of cross-reference it, because I don't know the answer to that question either.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. Do you have that? Do you know that, Mike?
I don't have it offhand, but I do know that we had, I was on the policy committee for many years. The policy committee never included the assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction ever. It was the superintendent, and it was driven by the superintendent. The difficulties that the policy committee, faced were mainly hinged upon organizational challenges with mainly the superintendent, but the central office as well, as far as putting policies forward. And just for clarity, the CAVE policies that are being reviewed, that have been reviewed and everything, Reading is a member of CAVE, Region 9 is not. Easton at one time was not. I don't know whether Easton 9 is a member now, whether they did go
And
back.
actually, I don't think Reading is a member now. I think Easton is, though. It's the membership has sort of gone in and out. We joined 2 years ago, and then
I get that. And so
And then
I would
unjoined.
also caution that I had mentioned this way back when, is that we, in the past, the districts have gone to CAVE, and CAVE has a service where they will compile new policy manuals with your existing policy manuals, and newer policies that are either recommended or required, and kind of compile a new policy manual. And then those have been distributed to first the policy committee for review, and then to the boards. And we did that in the past as a way of keeping the policies updated.
That's different. You're just describing two different things, Mike. There's a service that they will sell you, basically a policy book, and there's a service where they send you updated policies on a regular basis. They are different services.
yeah.
And what we've done in the past was
Okay,
accept
what
the.
I'm not confusing them. What I said is, in the past, we have had them put together.
No, we haven't.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell you this, Dr. McKinnon, go through and look, because there's a box in central office. I guarantee you, unless somebody threw it out, there is a box in central office that has stacks of new policy manuals for each of the boards. I guarantee it's there, because we've done it. And we did it under a previous superintendent before Dr. McMorran. And I told Dr. McMorran they were there, and he denied it. He said, no.
So we're 7 years in the past on,
Yeah,
on
that's
policies
going
of
back
this
to
scale.
the
Where's this going?
So look, if you're going to question what I'm saying, I can clarify it. I'm not looking to go 7 years past. I'm making a generalization of how we got here. And if you just keep dragging me back, it's going to take longer. Okay. We have in the past had CAVE compile or create a new policy manual. We have done that in the past. I think we've done it twice.
And then it never came to the board for approval?
It did way back when under Dr. Fossbender, it did come forward and was.
And it failed?
No.
Then it's impossible, because we have policies back to 1997 still on the books. So there's no wholesale revision that's happened since 1997.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to say it's done. If you go
I'm
back,
pointing out a flaw in your memory, because it's impossible for there to have been a wholesale replacement of the policy book before 1997 or since 1997.
Gentlemen, if I may interrupt, can we just focus on moving forward as
Yeah,
we
opposed
do
thank
this
you,
all the
Charles.
time.
relitigating the past?
We do this
Yeah.
all the time. We can't even get to where I can make a simple explanation. You want to pull it back and you want to question everything. Look, go back and look at minutes. That's all I can say. Go
Yeah,
back.
I think
You love
so.
to do that. Go back.
It's
into
possible.
Michelle's
It's
office.
actually, so here's the possible way that you can both be right. That we passed it, but it was never actually updated in terms of the sort of the policy that's posted or the policy manuals that we have. It is true that we have policies that date back to 1997.
Without a
So
doubt. But you could have a book that's compiled by CABE that they didn't touch some of the policies that were from 1987. They added a few policies in there and said, here's your new book.
but it's not just a function of when it was written, because that's not the date. The date that's on the policy is when it was approved by the boards. And so the date that it is noted as being approved by the boards is 1997. So what's possible is the boards actually did in the 2000s, did actually go through this process, did do this work, and then it was never actually applied to the policy manuals. That's possible, but we don't know. And it is, we would need to go back.
And it could be. My point with raising this was we inquired again to CABE to compile or to put together a policy manual for each of the boards. And because we're not all members of CABE, they gave us sort of at-large pricing to do that work. So they made it very clear in emails to Dr. McMorrin and myself that because we weren't members of CABE, in order to use their policies, we would have to pay for them. So the reason I say that is because we should be careful with what we're doing now. Because Easton now is a member, but we're all taking the policies.
And if I should have insisted on finishing because I only had maybe 60 seconds left of my my sort of background on this. So we started going through that process using the CAPE model policy. We took a 4-month break during COVID because many other things going on that we were trying to account for. When we came back, I guess 5 months ago, when Dr. McKinnon joined us and we explained the process to him, he said, "That's great. That sounds like you guys are doing important work. The shipment model policy, it's more concise. It's not expensive for them to provide you the update service. It's not right." And so we looked at and were able to benefit from him having done that work more recently in his previous district. And he was able to show us, here's what the email updates look like. Here's what the, sort of some of the policy looks like. So it's very promising. And so we were at the point prior to, I think, losing Maureen and Gwen, we were at the point of looking at the shipment model policy. And the intent was that we look at that shipment model policy and as quickly as possible, instead of what we had been doing, which was about 60 pages a week, instead of 60 pages a week, that we maybe do a 2-week break. That we say, okay, we're going to meet now. We're not going to meet next week. We'll meet the following week. And in that time, the intent will be that we will all look through the entirety of series 1000 or whatever the equivalent is in the shipment. And so that in the course of, say, 3 months, we would have reviewed all of their model policy, made notes and any edits that we think are necessary to reflect the values of our towns and our boards, and then bring that to the boards for a first reading. So that's the annotated history of sort of what we've been doing for the last 2+ years. Good.
Cheryl has her hand up, John.
Yep, I'm sorry, Cheryl.
Thanks. So might I suggest, so it sounds like past aside, the reality is we are reconstituted into committees. So I would recommend to the committees and the chairs respectively is to move forward with respect to, so it sounds like we are moving toward Shipment and Goodwin. and as a baseline for the two policy committees to work concurrently. So is that a fair understanding?
I certainly would support that, continuing in that direction. And I think we would want to iron out, is it reasonable that in a 2-week period, we are each reviewing, the 1000 series or maybe it's 1000 and 2000. So ironing out the details of how like those mechanics would work in our process, I think that would be important. I should also mention just a part of the process itself. We had a set of documents, and you can see it on the screen here. One of the I think most important documents that we realized we needed to create is what we are calling the enumerated duties document. Because what you'll find as you review policy is that it very frequently will say the superintendent or their designee will ... But there's no cross-reference of those duties. There's no consolidated view that helps you to understand what's the totality of sort of expectations in policy for the superintendent or their designee, et cetera. So we started to just, anytime we're reviewing the content, we would just say, oh, there's another duty, there's another duty, there's another duty. And so I think that would be a sort of...
It all allows to build out a more comprehensive understanding of the administration's obligations and to build out a governance calendar for where the board is obliged to provide certain updates or take certain steps without delving into hundreds of pages of policy. A couple page document that does that allows the boards to avoid accidentally failing to meet certain obligations.
Right. Which is, an easy trap to fall into given the number of places where the superintendent is asked to do something. We also, we said, we probably are going to want some kind of preface so that if in the language it says principal instead of head of school, or it says head of school instead of principal, that we can kind of have a blanket like, hey, if it says principal, we know that means principal or head of school. And so some kind of sort of translation guide that sort of covers us, but we would also endeavor to make the language itself inside of the policy sort of fit for all.
Sorry, just a couple more follow-up questions. So this is all per recommendation of Shipment, right? And in line with their process and their policies. And then another question is to the point about paying for it. So all 3 districts are now paying for this baseline shipment policies as you will, or we don't need to.
We did not engage Shipment yet. We were waiting to reconstitute the joint committee to say, is that something we want to do? Is it something we even need to do? Mike had mentioned that Region 9 had already paid for that, had actually already paid for the Shipment model policies. If that was the case, well, then should Easton and Reading reimburse? It's like what's the right process to move forward? And so I think there are questions that we would have of Shipment about whether or not we have a sort of active copy available to us and whether or not we're doing the updates. The pricing is really, it's pretty reasonable, and actually it's sort of on par with what the CABE pricing is in terms of, for the policy update service and things like that. But having spent a lot of time looking through CABE model policy, you're going to find, I think, far more typos and sort of there's some poorly written stuff in there that makes it really difficult to get through, and you end up spending your time wordsmithing, which is not what you want to do.
So I guess just another question, I guess, Jason, with respect to the budgets, is this something that that central office would have a provision for in or all the respective budgets?
I think the price was so reasonable that it wasn't even a factor.
Okay, great.
I don't know what the number is, and well, actually, I do know what the number is. I don't have it on hand exactly, but I can go back and look. Can I just add something, John?
Yeah, please.
When we were talking recently about shifting to using Shipment and Goodwin policies, what came along with that discussion was the idea that we could update a bulk of our policies all at once. right? And kind of look at, rather than looking at a series and going through each series one by one, that we would, I thought we were at the point where we were talking about sorting our policies into 3 groups. The policies we want, all of the policies we want to keep that we've adopted recently, the policies we want to repeal, and the policies we want to revise and update in bulk. And that was part of the conversation when we were talking about shipment. When I was talking about, it wasn't just that previously I moved to shipment policies. It was, we moved to shipment policies and we updated all of our policies. Let's say 80% of our policies all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And the advantage of doing that, I know we've talked about it, is that we can update policies that haven't been updated in over 20 years quickly. But the other advantage is that it actually gives the administration then time to focus on the regulations side of policy work. Because if we only do policies every Friday, policy by policy, we don't have that much time to actually build the regulations around a policy.
Yeah, agreed. So, and to be clear, even when we were talking about the CAPE policy, we were not going policy by policy. It would be, we're reviewing the 3000 series, and we would say, as many policies as we can do in a week's time. And I think instead, we are looking for a longer view of the sort of the block. I think one of the first things that we would want to do is just understand how many pages are actually in the shipment model policy book, and understanding that, then it's just a matter of doing some math, right? Like how many pages do we think we can review in the span of a month? And then the idea would be that, hey, maybe we have some heavy lifting over the course of a month or two, but we review that, and through that review, we can say, 90% of this we want to just adopt right now, or 95% we want to adopt it. Ideally, it's 99% we want to adopt right now, and we're only looking at the most recent policies that we've adopted that maybe would stay. But it's I think actually pretty likely that their Title IX policy, their bullying policy, is very closely aligned to ours. So I think that would be the sort of recommended process in my mind, is that we switch as many policies as possible, at a time, and not that we're doing policy by policy.
Okay, so just to jump in here, the fee that was paid was $3,000, and it was paid out of the central office budget.
That's good.
It was actually in the central office budget one year and articulated. So it was paid by all 3 boards, even though I had initiated the movement in that direction. I've spoken to Rich Mills. The current fee is $3,500. However, Shipman and Goodwin will honor that we paid it previously, and there'll be no additional sign-up fee. So there's no fee involved for us to join in. The ongoing fee is $1,000 a year. That would be $1,000 for all 3 districts. So it would be divided amongst all 3 districts.
Yeah.
So
that's really reasonable.
The way that
much
happens,
less.
I guess it's
333, 333, 333, and 333, 34 for Region 9.
Yeah.
We'll have to pay
I don't
the
know why that is.
additional dollar or whatever, or penny, however it starts out. But so that's the way the fees would be.
And that's much cheaper than CABE.
My thought was they have a policy, an attorney there that focuses on their policies, and we have them compile a policy manual for us with our current policies and any policies that they feel are required, vital, whatever. And then we can review that manual and
Yep.
improve it in bulk, like Dr. McKinnon is saying.
Yep.
I don't want to spend months and months and months on this stuff. The whole key to moving to Shipment and Goodwin way back when was so that you could update your policy manual in a way that you're legally compliant and you're covered for those unexpecteds. And then the policy committee, if they want to go through later on and suggest tweaks or kind of additional items, my reluctance has been, I do not support altering any policy, even a single word, unless board council approves it after we've changed it. And so I feel that every time we change this reference or change that, it's going to have to be reviewed, and then we're going to start getting into a lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah.
I would be in favor of having Shipman, do as I said and put together a manual for us that, I'm certainly not opposed to the policy committee having a first glance at it, but I would not, as an individual board member, I would not support, us taking 5 months to get to the end game here.
Yeah. I
just
think
it's got to be.
Just so I understand, Mike, your proposal is to hire Shipman to do this work and to pay them hourly to do this work. And then sort of any future change to policy would require more hourly time to Shipman.
I don't know if that's what he was saying this.
Well, you can frame it that way, Counselor. But what I'm saying to you is that they have a and I'll get the price because the woman is calling me next week. So they have a fee, that they would charge us to do this, to put together this manual, right? Yes, if what you're saying is moving down the line, we would have to pay them. Yes, if it's your preference that moving down the line, as they send us these updates or provide these updates, which would be part of the service that we would already be paying for, and it is your desire to alter the wording in said updates, then yes, we would have to pay them to review it after we alter.
Okay, so then another way to frame it is your preference that the board completely outsource its policy obligation to council and take no direct role in policy except to adopt what council sells us.
Again, as to your framing, that's fine. What I'm saying, though, I think was very clear is that
Well, it was clear. I just want to make sure that I understand that the way that one can frame it is that we have outsourced this responsibility entirely.
Well, entirely is the word that you want to throw. We should outsource the initial work to get us to where we need to be legally compliant. If down the road there are issues that the policy committee has, or if new policies are not, and again, I would circle it right back to the superintendent, because I think this is very clear in our charges. And I mean, this is the superintendent's work. If the superintendent has a problem with a certain policy or has issue with it, and we need to, or he feels that we should alter it, then that would be fine. But that, again,
I don't know why it's the superintendent's prerogative to drive policy. It's the board's prerogative to drive policy. That's one of its
not
core
according
functions.
to the charge.
The charge is wrong, according to the statutory prerogative of the board.
Well,
Yeah.
Can I ask, can I interrupt
Yeah,
here?
Cheryl.
And John, Chris, Mike, I respect all of you, but if you can make your comments more succinct, that would be awesome. So practically speaking, right, the way I read all three bylaws is that the charge of each boards respectively are to set policy and hire the superintendent. Those in my mind are the two primary things why we're elected in the first place. So from a practical perspective, just, let's just assume we're going to move forward with Shipment. Mike, awesome job with the cost. Great job. Awesome. And let's just assume we're going to move forward with that. from a practical perspective, keeping in mind you all agree that the charge of the boards are to work with the superintendent and whoever he designates to set policy for the respective districts, assuming you agree with that, then what would be the practical work of the policy committees as constituted? And when I say policy committees, I'm acknowledging that Region 9 has a policy committee and we have a joint ER9, but only currently participating in with Easton and Reading. So what would the work of the people on this phone be on a go-forward basis? That's my question.
So I think it what it's been in the past. It would be what it's been, you know, in the past.
I don't think you can speak to what it's been in the recent.
Well, yes, I can, because I've been on the policy committee.
Not for the past 5 years,
the
is what
operative
John's
word is
point
recent
is.
past. Thank you very
So
much,
what
Mike.
you're- what
No,
you've
Mike,
changed
I
it
think you
into.
need to stop. Mike, please stop.
Well,
Cheryl, to answer your question, I
Yeah,
believe that a
fair
really
enough, the reason.
practical way of moving forward, we get the model policy from Shipment, right? That should be no cost. The model policy book from Shipment. If we decide that we want to complete the entire review of that policy to recommend that it be sort of shifted in 4 weeks' time, then that's just math. We just have to figure out how many pages we need to review in order to hit that target in that amount of time. If we say we will take 2 months to do this, then it's just a function of dividing the number of pages that we need to review, because I believe it would be irresponsible for us to take the model policy and say, adopt the model policy without us having first reviewed it.
And as a
I'm
practical
not
matter,
suggesting that we
with
should
respect,
engage in changing it, but we do need to flag if there's something that is a problem for our boards.
the way we got here in the first place with 3 sets of policies with many, many, many stale policies was because the policy committees of the past largely abdicated their policy role and didn't go through and make updates on a regular basis, despite the fact that CABE, Shipment, and anybody else will provide legislative updates on a several times a year cadence. And that's how we got to phone books of material from Dr. McMorrin saying, y'all need to fix this.
Yep.
Yeah, so we got there because policies were not brought forward, and policy committees did not meet. That's a given. That's a given. Okay, but back to what Cheryl asked, as far as what the role of a policy committee is I do not believe, to Chris's point and question, that the policy committee's role is to rewrite policy. Okay, we have in the past, if we see a conflict with something, a practice or something that we're doing that does not fit in with the policy, obviously that's what the policy committee has done in the past to identify where the policy may not align with either the practice or the direction that the superintendent wants to move in. It's not to take, in other words, Shipment still should send the model policies moving forward, and the policy committee should look at them, and the superintendent should look at them and make sure that they fit in with what we're doing and what the superintendent feels we should be doing, and then bring them forward.
And I don't think that's inconsistent with the answer I gave. I think that's exactly the answer that I gave.
No, but I guess the point simply is that we as a policy committee, they should not be writing policy. They should just be reviewing policy. And to Cheryl's point is that we're a policy, is a function of the board. It's true, but we're not supposed to write policy. We're just supposed to approve policy.
Well, that's not true, but either way, when we review the policy,
Mike, lose the attitude this morning, please.
Yeah, we can just
What are you talking about? My attitude reflects the attitude of other members.
I'm sorry, Kathy was trying to get a word in here.
Well, my question is, should we move forward with this template, these policy templates? Is the thought that we would take that template and adapt the template to our current policies? Or is it the reverse, that we would take our existing policies and modify them as per the template?
So it's less a template and more, we have community relations, let me share this back again and just give you a very quick. So community relations, administration, business and non-instructional operations, personnel, students, instruction, policies in each one of these categories. And some of these are, 100 pages long, and some of these are 150 pages long, and some are 50 pages long. And so, sort of different policy inside of each one of these sections. I think what we're talking about here is our existing policy, that we would take that policy, put it over here on a shelf and no longer use it. We would instead take what Shipment and Goodwin has put together in relation to administration, business and non-instructional operations, personnel, instruction, et cetera. So each one of these buckets, we would take that and put it as our policy. Doing that without reviewing the existing policy and the policy that Shipment is proposing, I believe would be irresponsible. And I don't think anybody is suggesting we do that. So we review those policies, we identify any concerns that we have, and then we can figure out, do we feel like we can draft something and then put it in front of Shipment, or do we want to say, Shipment, we would like for you to draft something else that touches on these elements? I think that's a relatively trivial sort of decision that we would need to make at the time.
So
and John, the third choice is to kind of reach the conclusion that I've reached over the past few years doing this, is, I've used CABE policies for years. CABE has 33 pages of just an index of policies.
Yep.
And in the 3 or 4 districts that I've worked in, we could never make a dent in updating policies using the CABE manual, because we were always going back to policies from the 1990s, the early 2000s, and revising policies that were 20 years old. At the same time, we were revising recommended new policies that were coming to us recently.
Right. It's a logistical problem, one that I think we solved fairly well. Essentially, we had a document for any incoming new policies. And, if you played out the clock, we would have finished the CABE probably around June, right? We would have finished the CABE review by June. I think it's good that we stopped when we did, based on your recommendation, to say, let's look at the Shipment, because even if we finished by June and we had an updated set there, we're still in the same problem of it's too much. They just have way too many policies. So switching to Shipment creates a much tighter set to maintain.
The second thing that we realized, and I think you're describing it well, was that oftentimes, even when we were wrestling with the CABE policies, we would struggle with their language, their vocabulary, the way the policies were written. And we would actually go and look at a Shipment policy because we contracted, they were our attorneys, right? I think Mike has pointed this out previously.
Yep.
Shipment, they're our attorneys. Why aren't we using their policy? So oftentimes we would actually go and look at a Shipment policy and say, wow, this is half the length, much clearer, very simple. And so we were using Shipment policies anyway to help us write CABE policies. And so, the conclusion was, let's use.
I think this is at least the 4th time that I've been a part of a conversation similar to this over the past couple of months. And so from a go forward perspective, it sounds like there is a general consensus that the Shipment model policies are the go forward. The fork in the road here is either A, the D'Agostino approach of write a check to Shipment to do all the work, or B, the other approach of take their model policies and review them on some sort of expedited basis to align with Dr. McKinnon's buckets of, replace, repeal, ignore, or modify. And that's the next question for these 2 committees as to which direction it wants to go. But I think the question of whether or not to move away from CABE into Shipment sounds like it's resolved. So I don't think we need to sort of litigate that question anymore. We need just to sort of decide what the path forward is and what the calendar going forward is. And then to the extent that there is a hypothetical future where these committees meet on a quarterly basis to review updates, and we decide what the process for those updates is, God willing, we get to that place, we can talk about what that looks like. Because it might be 2027 by the time we get there.
So, Kathy, did that actually answer your question in terms of the like how the process would work and what we would actually be doing?
I think it did. If I
Okay.
understand correctly, what would happen is that the shipment policies would be our new starting point.
Right.
We
the
would
base.
the base starting point. So all existing Region 9, Easton, and Reading policies that are currently in place would be superseded
Mhm.
through procedure by the Shipment Goodman policies.
I
But
think it's a
what
not
Chris is getting at
necessarily.
is that before that happened, the policy committees would review the Shipment Goodman,
Right.
the shipment policies, tweak, amend, change as needed to reflect
Yeah.
any differences that exist. And then that would be put in place. So
Yeah.
the shipment policies would be basically a clean slate, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And we would move from there. Is that correct?
I think
Yes.
that's right. And I think that the place where Chris would differ is that it's possible that we have, especially more recently passed policy,
That's the question.
that is sort of outstrips the shipment policy. I think that's unlikely to happen, though. I think if that did happen, we could take our most recent policy on X, Y, or Z, send it to Shipman, because we have a more intimate relationship with Shipman than we did with CABE, and we could say, here is the problem that we have adopting this policy. We have this one, which accounts for this, this, and this. Do you agree? And they could either say, no, here's why ours is better. Or they could say, cool, we're updating ours to reflect some of the dimensions that you touch on. I think that's much more likely to occur than certainly it would have with CABE.
Practical suggestion to that point, right? So I think the predecessor policy committees got up to the 4,000 series, if my recollection serves me.
That's correct.
Then this new reconstitution of committees can then start forward with Shipman from the 5,000 series on, and then by the time we get around, I don't know, unless there's something crucial, I don't know.
Cheryl, I
It's
think
better
the
to start
reality,
from-
the reality is that Shipman doesn't align with the numbering
Right.
system at all. They don't number their policies
Oh.
at all, which
Yeah.
is its own sort of nightmare.
Right.
But I think that the reality is that we would be sort of throwing the entire amount of work
Yeah.
out and starting again.
We spent
The
a week and a
advantage, in
half in
theory-
sunk cost fallacy, and just going, but we spent all this time, and we're just like, you know what, we got to move on.
But in
The Shipman
substance,
policies are much more concise.
but don't in substance though, the policies that were amended, I feel sad to,
I know.
for lack of a better word,
It
to
is what it
throw
is.
out the work of the last 2 years that did go through the appropriate process. Because something that's never been questioned is that we follow the appropriate process to have the
Right.
second readings through each respective board.
Yeah.
And in substance, the words are the words, and they are linked to statute as cited in the current policies that were refreshed. So there's really nothing we can save there.
There may be, and I think really, if we, as Kathy said, we start with the Shipman as the base, and then we say, is there anything here that we have concerns about? Is there anything in the existing policy that we say, wait a second, we need to save that? That to me becomes the process. But I think you want a common base. I think it would be a mistake to say CABE 0 through 4,000 series, Shipman for all the other stuff. I think that could be really a mess.
Okay.
So in the end, you're going to still have 3 policy books, one
Yes,
for each district.
you have
We
to.
always did that. We don't have any other choice.
I said still, yes. So,
Yep.
to Chris's question before, each board can decide, their own path. If Region 9 wants to have Shipman put together the policy and recommend a review, but Reading and Easton would prefer to, take the longer approach and look at everything and go through it, they can certainly do that. The big question or the main focus of this committee all along has been alignment. And so if you're using the same firm's policies, you have that basic alignment. There will be certain differences based upon, the grade serviced and the differences in the.
And this is where
Sorry, I know
Yeah.
we may be diving into another rabbit hole, and it's 9:58. I have a hard stop at 10. I have a call I got to jump on. for work. So I know we're not necessarily bottoming out on exactly how we're going to do each step, but I think we have enough of a general direction that we should be looking for Shipment to give us the model policy book.
And can I say that I have a clear blueprint for how to do this? I've just done it recently.
Yep.
Where we adopted 80% of shipment policies. We didn't need to have an attorney go back and review the policies that we adopted because they're their own policies, right?
Yep.
So we didn't pay an attorney to review word by word the policy because it was a policy from them.
Yep.
Right. However, we identified things in 3 buckets: the policies that we're adopting, the policies that we're maintaining, the policies that we're appealing. And there's still a lot of work to do with the policies that you've adopted recently that you may want to keep for a while and look at the correlation between what you've just done and what the new shipment recommendation is. And then there's another bucket, which shipment does not get into. How is the high school going to be used, and what facility, and how do we rent the high school for the public, and what are the facility charges when we rent to the Boy Scouts, and so on. They don't get into any of that. So there is still a lot of policy work that the committee needs to do.
Right.
But 80% of it is done in one step, which saves a lot of time, and you still have a lot of other work that you need to focus on.
So can we look to have for our next meeting the model policy? And if we have it before that, we can each do our own math to figure out, what that looks like. Can we just have the entire model policy book from Shipment?
Yes, I actually already have it.
Great.
I've got all the policies. I think really what you should focus on is not so much every policy, but focus on what is your framework going to be? What's your procedure? What's your procedure or mechanism? Are you going to do kind of like what I suggested and identify the 3 areas? Or are you going to go through and review all of Shipment's policies and cross-reference with your policies and so on? So,
yep, good.
I would support that approach, Sarah, in terms of the policy of Region 9. As an individual board member, I would support putting that on the next agenda and hope that John and Chris will concur from a Easton ER9 policy committee standpoint. And then we can perhaps discuss that policy manual, if you will, and then procedural, what the process and procedure should be going forward. And apologies, Sarah, I have to drop. So I know there are other things on the Region 9 agenda. So, but for purposes of the minutes, I just have to adjourn.
Yeah.
So sorry about that, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Are you able to stay, or I can make?
Yeah, we lose quorum though. So
yeah, that's right. So I can make Sarah host. There you go.
So I'll move that we adjourn our meeting at 10:02.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think we are adjourned at 10:02.
And Kathy, should we keep talking, or do you think we should adjourn at the exact same time as well? How does that work?
Sarah, you have
In
one
this
more item
instance.
on.
You have to finish your agenda.
You've got one more item on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
And
Unless
Okay.
you choose the table.
Right. So we've got the recommendation for nullifying the face masking policy. Does anyone want to go ahead and share their thoughts?
I think you have a first reading to repeal the policy from the meeting this week.
Mhm.
So I don't think there's anything really to discuss on that topic. I think that we just need to put it on the next Region 9 board meeting, and that will be repealed, I would imagine, at a second reading.
Well, yes, process-wise, that's correct, Dr. McKinnon. The reason it was added to the agenda obviously was just, for awareness. As discussed at the previous joint board meeting, the board has moved to suspend the face masking policy through August 15th or further action by the boards, right? So the policy is suspended anyway. I think we've all kind of decided today that we're going to move quickly to adopt Shipment and Goodwin's policies. I don't envision, though, just as an individual board member, I don't envision that we would ever want, that we would move to restore the policy that we suspended. I think if a policy was recommended and we needed one, it would probably be or most certainly be a different policy. So I don't see that there's any harm with nullifying the obsolete policy, as we had stated at the meeting. But again, the reason it's on the agenda is because you are the policy committee, and if members have questions or have varying opinions regarding that, this is the opportunity to kind of discuss that.
Members, anyone else have any thoughts to add?
Just a question from a procedural standpoint. Is the next step then, does the policy committee recommend to the Region 9 board this action, or does that happen at the Region 9 board meeting independently? It's a procedural question because I'm still learning.
Yeah, understood. And I guess there are different ways that you can choose to do. You could discuss it here and decide to make a motion to recommend to the Region 9 board, one way or another, how to handle the second reading, or you can just wait until the Region 9 board meeting when it's on the agenda and say that it was discussed at the policy committee, if you're not going to make a recommendation. So you have the committee has the option of making a recommendation, but there has been a first reading previously. So I guess that's your decision whether you want to make a recommendation or not, I guess.
I don't have a recommendation at this time. Kathy, do you?
I mean, I'm open to both ways. My recommendation, if asked, it would be to nullify the existing policy, because I do believe that should a new policy be put in place, it would be very different. So to work to be modifying a past policy, I think it gets more confusing versus start fresh. So that would be my recommendation if we choose to make one. But I'm also comfortable with going to discussing it at the Region 9 board meeting as well.
Agreed. Okay. So we can table that and bring it to the Region 9 board meeting. I will discuss with Mike about putting that on the agenda. Is there anything else that we wanted to discuss regarding the face mask policy, or is everyone okay? I know that Todd's on the call. I didn't know if he had any comments. Looks like not. Okay. All right. So then I move to adjourn. Well, with the two of us here, how does that work? Is it just me and then you second?
Yeah, so actually the chair can adjourn the meeting absent objection, or you can ask for a motion, and lucky for this meeting, I'm ex officio, so I can also vote. So if Kathy wants to make a motion.
I would say, though, that Todd has sent a note that he cannot unmute himself. I don't know if that means that he would like to speak before it's adjourned.
I just see that as well.
Okay,
Todd, did you-
Todd, write notes on pieces of paper and hold them up to the screen so we can. No, you're the tech guy. You're supposed to.
Give us a thumbs up, Todd, if you're okay with adjourning, or a thumbs down if you want to add comments in a typed format. All right. Okay, Mike, I'll let you go ahead then.
Motion to adjourn.
Kathy, did you want a second?
I will second.
All right, I think we're all set. All right, thank you all
you.
for coming today, and we will discuss more soon, Mike. Take care.
Right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.